everybody. Hello, hello. It's nice to see you all here today. Thanks for waiting a little bit extra time. I promise it was worth it. Welcome back, everybody, to Conversations with Authors. Today we are bringing you Jorge Arteaga, not the one I thought I would mess up on, and Emily May, who are the authors of I've Got Your Back. But before we get to our authors properly, please allow me to welcome you back one last time to Book Passages Conversations with Authors. If you've seen one of these events before, we're glad to see you again. But if you're new here, Book Passage is an independently run bookstore at the San Francisco Bay Area, and we host and run book talks just like this one very often throughout the week. As we are now streaming on YouTube and will continue to do so in the future, please consider subscribing by clicking the subscribe button just below the video. It's completely free and honestly helps us out a lot. And as an added bonus, if you click the little bell next to the subscribe button and select all, you will be alerted every time we go live with one of these, so you don't have to miss out on a talk or a book you otherwise might have really enjoyed. If you'd like to check out our upcoming events or like the idea of receiving our email newsletter, you can find it using the very first link in the description below. At bookpassage.com or just at bookpassage.com. If you'd like to check out our speaker's book, which again is I've Got Your Back, you again can find that in the description below or at bookpassage.com. Finally, if you have any questions for us tonight, please take the time to write them in the YouTube chat. It is just to the right of the video you are watching or just below, depending on how you're seeing this. And it is the only way to get your questions to our speakers today. So please don't miss out on your chance. Now on to our authors. Please allow me to introduce Jorge Arteaga, whose passion for history, places, and people in his ability to plan and execute have allowed him to bring his operational skills to serve in the social justice movement. He earned his bachelor's in American Studies from SUNY College at Old Westbury and his master's in American Studies at the City College of New York. He is currently completing his MS in Project Management and Operations at Southern New Hampshire University. Also, our co-author tonight is Emily May, who is an international leader in the movement to end harassment in all its forms. In 2005, at the age of 24, she co-founded Right to Be, formerly Hollaback. May has won 11 awards for her work and has been featured in more than 200 news media outlets, including People, the New York Times, NPR. She holds a bachelor from New York University, a master's from the London School of Economics, and is a Prime Movers Fellow. Please welcome both of them to the screen. Thank you very much for being here, everybody. Welcome.
Thanks so much for having us, Nick. We're excited to be here.
Yeah, we're excited. Thanks for having us. So I'm going to go ahead and kick us off here, huh? Or get us sharing. We're good there?
Yeah, we're good. We're good. So welcome. We wrote a book. And it's called I've Got Your Back, the indispensable guide to stopping harassment when you see it. And it is truly our offer to the world about how to intervene when you see harassment happening. So let me tell you a little bit about myself before I hand it over to Jorge. As Nick mentioned, I co-founded Hollaback and started it when I was a wee one, only 24 years old, and really started it based on my own experiences with street harassment or sexual harassment in public space. And at the time, it was something I was experiencing 3 or 4 times a day, and I felt like there was no meaningful solution to it. And so we had recently heard a story about a woman named Tal Nguyen who was riding the New York City subway when an older man started publicly masturbating in front of her. And Tal pulled out her cell phone camera. She took his picture with the idea of taking it to the police. But when she took it to the police, they said, "Sorry, miss, he's probably 7 or 8 stops away. Nothing we can do." And then from there, she said, "All right, well, I'm just going to put it on Flickr." And it went viral and made it to the front cover of the New York Daily News. And so with this, we started Right to Be, formerly known as Hollaback, with the idea of sharing stories about harassment. And today, Right to Be is a global organization working to end harassment in all of its forms, not just gender-based street harassment, but also harassment as it happens at work, online, and harassment as it happens in ways that are racist or sexist, homophobic, ableist. And our idea here is that we want to make sure that people have the ability, each of us have the ability to build a world that's free of harassment and filled with humanity. And our work focuses on turning the care that we have for each other into simple, creative, and effective action. So that's a little bit about me and my history. I come at this very much from the experience of somebody who has experienced harassment throughout my life, but also somebody who has worked in the field of addressing harassment for over 18 years now. And in my journey has learned that harassment happens in so many different ways to so many different people, and it can look so different. It's also an issue that I've learned over time that we, despite having probably experienced it since the beginning of time, have spent relatively little energy addressing as a society. We have this mantra that sticks and stones will break my bones, but words will never hurt me, right? That has really gotten in the way. But over the past 5 years, we've seen a surge in really, I would say, understanding that words do hurt, that they do create harm in our society, and that they can escalate into worse forms of violence. And so it's been such an amazing journey to really take content that that we created over 12 years ago around bystander intervention, to have seen it have almost zero interest because people didn't actually believe that harassment was a problem 10, 12 years ago. And then to see this surging interest in bystander intervention, this surging interest in what people can do to address harassment when it happens. So with that, I will pass it over to my co-author, co-conspirator, co-visionary, Jorge Arteaga.
Oh, thank you so much. I love it when you say that. I think it's awesome. So, I mean, we wrote a book, right? Like Emily said, I'm still sitting with it. I think for me, coming to this work is important, not for a couple of reasons. One, right, my lived experience as a gay Afro-Latino male, who I grew up in, I would say, a not so easy neighborhood to grow up in, especially, you know, when you're a male of color and then later identify as, you know, gay. And so, you know, I remember before coming to Hollaback, well, Right to Be now, but when I first came, it was Hollaback. You know, always wanting to show up in service of folks, to support folks who are experiencing harm, but really not knowing how to do that. And part of that really came from, you know, the way I grew up was like, you mind your business, you don't get involved. That's not your business. Things can quickly turn on you. You know, you don't, never mind even thinking about calling, you know, for police or anything like that, or telling someone else anything, right? Like, you deal with it and then you keep it moving. And so that was hard because I also grew up and was raised by a whole bunch of activist women of color, right? Like, they were, so at the same time I was seeing this whole don't say anything, don't show up to, you know, you don't call the police, that's not how we handle stuff, right? Considered snitching, stuff like that. But then I also had these amazing women who were just like, you know, providing support to the folks in the community who people weren't normally thinking of, right? Like folks who were who didn't have a home, right? Women who were experiencing domestic violence, LGBTQ plus youth who have been kicked out of their homes and didn't have a place to go. The women in my family were showing up in those situations. So I felt this impetus to do something, but I didn't know what. And so I showed up to then Hollaback. And I remember learning about the 5 Ds of bystander intervention and thinking to myself, wow, there is something that I can do. There is something that folks can do when we see people experiencing harm. There is something someone could have done when that person called me, you know, a slow fat fuck on the MTA platform, because I had some weight. It was taking me a minute to get up the stairs, and someone could have said something, but I thought, I was like, well, if I didn't know about this, and at that time I considered myself to be pretty quote unquote progressive, right? I didn't think the everyday person will know that there's other things you can do besides directly intervening, right? Or putting yourself in harm's way. And so, within my first month at the organization, I got to do some of that. I got to practice the 5 Ds of bystander intervention and realized that my superpower was distract, and not distract, sorry, direct, that I was a direct intervener. Once I kind of was able to put it into action and saw how helpful and useful it was, and how I was able to impact someone just by supporting them when they were being harmed, this is what we wanted to do. We wanted to put it out into the world. And so Emily, last year we trained over 250,000 folks. And I think training those people, we saw that they were feeling exactly what we were feeling. Like, folks wanted this. They wanted to be able to digest it, to do something with it. And so Emily convinced me to write the book with her. So that's why I come to this work. That's why it's important to me. That's why this book is important to me. And I will yell it to the mountains, and everyone I know will get a copy. But why the book is important. So I think we're gonna get a little fun now, just to see why the book is important. We're gonna have a little pop quiz. And so we want to know, folks who are watching, make sure if you're watching, get your answers in that chat. And we will give you all a second to respond. But what percentage of people said it improved the situation when someone intervened to stop the harassment? And so do you think it was 15%, 79%, 45%, or 62%? And we'll go ahead and let some answers come into that chat before we go ahead and give you all a response. And we got a question that we would like to answer.
So while those answers are coming in, and while you guys are guessing, what percentage of people said it improved the situation when somebody intervened to stop harassment, I'm going to answer this question from Mr. Domingo, who asked, what advice would you give on introducing or teaching the 5 Ds to children? Is it recommended? We've got you. Yes, it is recommended. We actually have videos that we have put together on what the 5 Ds can look like for children that we would absolutely love for you to show to your kids. They're really designed for ages 3 to 10 about. But then in addition to that, we are working on developing a K through 12 curriculum that can be taught by teachers in schools, that also helps to achieve some of the English and history standards that are required in schools as well. So you can, achieve all the things at once, if you will. I don't want to kill any birds, but you can achieve all the things. And so stay tuned for that as well. We'll be looking at launching that in the coming weeks and years, and or even flirting with the possibility of going ahead and writing a 5 Ds for kids children's book as well. But it's a great question, because we are absolutely aligned with you. It is one thing for adults to learn this, but it's a whole other thing for kids to learn this. And what I would also offer is that when we talk to kids, we tell them basically the only thing they can do when they see harassment, bullying happen is to tell their teacher. And that's just one option. And not all teachers are going to be the best folks out there to receive this information. Not all teachers are equipped to move with this information, which is another thing that we're hoping to solve by teaching bystander intervention specifically to educators. But people, as we know, are more likely to act if they have an option that responds to them. So that's what the 5 Ds is all about. And we've taken the time to adapt it to children because we're aligned. This is a hugely important issue, and we want to get it out there, and we want the 5 Ds to be as widely known among kids in the 2020s as Stop, Drop, and Roll was known among kids in the 70s and 80s, 90s, you know, the rest of us.
Thank you, Emily. Thank you for that question. That was a great question. And so we both share some information with y'all about where you can see those videos or show them to your kids. And so we got some answers rolling in. And so it looks like a majority of, we got some mixed answers, but majority of y'all said 79%. And so, yes, so the 79s have it. 79% of people said it improved their situation when someone stepped in to support them when they were experiencing harassment, but only 25% of people said someone actually helped them. And so the hope is to close that gap, right? To get more folks involved and let them know that there's options. You have options. There's different ways you can get involved that don't necessarily involve you putting yourself in harm's way or harming yourself. And when we think about harm, I think not just like physical harm, right? Because there is we do talk about online and workplace harassment as well in the book. And so thinking of like, you know, what are some of those financial or career implications that folks worry about, real things that folks worry about, power dynamics that may be at play in the workplace, and how you can navigate those as well. And so we will talk more about the solution, right? That's what this book is, one of the many solutions. And when we talk about bystander intervention, you know, we're perfectly aware that it is as old as time, right? We did not invent it. However, what we have done is through the over 250,000 people we've trained and the over 18,000 stories we've collected, is we've listened to folks and we've heard, you know, and studied like what is supportive for them, right? How have they been able to show up or receive support in a way that has been thoughtful, and then also equip folks with just knowledge, right? Like things we can do to step in. And so we build a quick framework, or 5 Ds, so that in those moments when you freeze and you do want to do something, you do want to step in, you know, and you just don't know what to do, you have 5 things you can quickly refer to, except that in the book, you get to spend some more time figuring out what that is for you. And so, Emily, you want to go ahead and kick us off with our first D?
Yeah, let me tell you about the 5 Ds. So we have 5 Ds. The first one is distract, followed by delegate, followed by document, followed by delay, followed by direct. So what we want to do here is just give you a little introduction to what they are. Obviously, they are deeply unpacked in this book that you guys are about to read. But we want to, you know, kick us off with a little teaser about what's to come. So let's take a look at distract. Distract is simply creating a distraction to de-escalate the situation. So that could be something as simple as, you know, dropping a coffee cup or a handful of change, right? Like not the good stuff, more like the pennies, on the floor. People will scramble to pick it up, or people will move so they don't get wet. It can also look like something as you know, simple as starting a conversation with the person being harassed. So it could be a, hey, you look familiar. Do I know you from somewhere? Or, gosh, you know, do we work together? Or what's directions to right? The idea isn't necessarily to start like a deep, meaningful conversation about the harassment that they're experiencing. The idea is really to start a conversation that then helps them and you build safe space with each other. And in doing that, the person doing the harassing starts to get starved of the attention they're looking for in that dynamic, and will slowly and surely back it up. So either approach that you have, and these approaches work at work, online. We've heard stories of people at work who, will say like, hey, Susie, like, I really need your help with this thing over here, away from where you are, right? Work all of these different dynamics, and distract is a really popular one because there's a lot of creativity in here. There's a lot of ability to kind of throw down. You're able to disrupt harassment while it's happening, and you never have to be detected by the person doing the harassing.
Mhm. All right, so let's distract. And now I will take us through delegate. And so delegate is really about getting someone to help you, finding someone to support you. And, when we say get someone to support you, I mean, think about the person next to you, right? How might you be able to get them to support you if you're on public transportation? You see something, you might feel like, I'm not the right person to get involved in this thing. How can I, get someone else involved and say like, hey, do you see what's happening over there? Do you mind maybe sitting in between them or saying something? I don't feel comfortable because it seems like that woman over there is being harassed because she's a woman. I'm also a woman. I don't want to get harassed as well, right? Like these are real things that folks think about. And so how do you get someone else to support you? And then, you could think about who might be in authority in that space. So on that same bus, maybe you might go up to a bus driver. I mean, realistically, right, the bus driver is driving the bus, so they might not be able to help you as quickly. But if that's what you might need, maybe you need to get the bus stopped or whatever it is, you can go up to a bus driver. If you're at a restaurant, think about maybe like your server or like a manager. And so thinking about who might be an authority in that space, and someone who asked about kids, right? Schools, like might be a teacher, might be a principal, right? So thinking about who that person is. So folks always ask when we say delegate, well, I know we'll just delegate it to the police, or we'll call 911. And actually, we do not recommend that you call police immediately. You should check in with the person, if you can, check in with the person who's experiencing the harm, harassment, and see like, hey, do you need me to call 911? And if they say yes, then go ahead. But what we found is that often oftentimes folks actually they don't feel exactly safe around the police, or worry that things might escalate, or that they may somehow be harassed or be put at further risk. We've seen that with folks who historically don't have good relationships or good experiences with law enforcement, and also it can quickly escalate things. I think now pivoting from a public space to thinking about how does that work, like how does that work at work, right? Delegate. At work we have resources. You might consider talking to a manager, a supervisor, or going to your HR department, right? Delegating to them. And then, in an online setting, we think about how might you use the platforms, right? Delegate it to them by reporting it, or getting your, if you have folks who are supporting you and maybe like pages that you're a part of or listservs you might be a part of, letting them know about the harm that you're witnessing and how they might be able to support. And so that is delegate. Emily, you want to take us through document?
All right, so document. We have seen so many human rights abuses, especially, over the past 10 years since cell phone cameras have risen into popularity, exposed. And we're going to teach you how to do it a little different, because the real secret sauce to all 5 of these D's here is that bystander intervention isn't about being a hero. It's not about swooping down and saving the day. It's about prioritizing the person being harassed. And so with document, while you are documenting somebody's harassment, it is an incredibly important and powerful thing to do. But your next move isn't to, march off to the nightly news. It is not to march off to your local, Instagram stories. Your next right move, once you have documented that harassment, is to give it to the person being harassed. Really leave them in choice for what they want to do. Recognize that this is their trauma, right? For some folks, what that might look like, given their life, their story, their family, is hiding it. But for many, many, many folks, what we find is that they want to shine a light on this. They want to send it to the media or use it to explain to their boss why they're late to work today. They want to post on their own social media feeds so that people understand what it's like to be in their body every single day. But they want to be in choice about it. And so your role as a bystander is to let them be in choice, whether it's in public and you are busting out your cell phone camera, maybe it's at work and you're just taking notes on something that's happening, giving somebody those notes so they have them in the event that they do want to report it to HR. Or maybe it's online and document is about taking screenshots that person can then file away if the situation escalates or use to report the harassment to the platform where it happens. No matter how you document, the key, and really this is the key with all of our approaches, is that you put the control in the hands of the person being harassed as to what happens next. All right, back to you, Jorge.
So I know our plan was to switch off, but I feel like we're about to roll into our superpowers right now. And so I feel like you should do delay and I'll do direct.
All right. That's true. I have a wimpy super. I don't know if anybody here is like historically conflict adverse, like I am. I've gotten better at conflict, by the way. But I've also always been really, really good at that, check-in, at that best friending of people. My first job out of college was as a case manager and outreach worker for mentally ill homeless adults. And so the "are you okay?" right, is a core question that I intuitively understand in my body. And that's why I love delay, is because it is that simple. It's the "are you okay?" This is something that a lot of times when harassment happens, it's so quick. It's all you can do is ask if somebody is okay. But it's also something that can be paired with literally any of these other Ds, right? Anything that you do, that quick check-in is so simple, right? You're like, I can't believe there's a whole D dedicated to asking people okay. And yet it is so powerful. Our research from Cornell University shows that as little as a knowing glance can reduce trauma for people who experience harassment. So that knowing glance is something that any of us can do. I'll tell you a quick story. Is probably, I don't even know, 7 or 8 years ago, I was riding the New York City subway back from a city council hearing on harassment, believe it or not. And I was with our intern, Kate, and there's an older woman sitting across from her, probably across from us in her 70s or 80s. And she looks at us and she kind of does like encouraging us to scoot down on the seat. And we look around and like there's nobody else on the seats. It's not crowded. It's the middle of a work day. And all of a sudden, Kate and I look to our right and we see this man fully exposed, waist down. And we literally scream, right? And as we scream, this man just exits. He leaves. He goes to another car. And Kate and I were sort of in this just moment of deep shock, right? And we look over at this woman across from us, and she just does this like very classic New Yorker, like people who ride the subway, like shakes her head, right? Just that head shake. She doesn't say anything to us. It's simply that head shake. But the fact that she took the time to ask us to scoot away and then took the time to give us that acknowledgement that what we went through wasn't normal, it wasn't okay, it wasn't the price we pay for being women or being gay, right? Like that was everything. And that's what delay is. Over to you, direct, Jorge. about direct, which is your go-to superpower.
Yeah, yeah. And so it's funny because I always thought of direct as like, I'm just gonna go and tell this person off and tell them exactly what I think and like go off on them. And then I realized like, nope, that's not it. That's not what direct is, right? So direct is being direct about the harassment, the disrespect that you're witnessing. But then it's like you create that boundary. So be direct, that's racist, that was sexist, that's inappropriate. You're making that person feel uncomfortable, and then give them a very clear action boundary. You should step away from them, give them some space, stop talking to them, get away from them. And then that's it. Don't engage with the person who's doing the harassing. Don't go into a back and forth or get into an argument or like, I'm going to tell you, because that's not what you're there for. You're there to take care of the person who's experiencing the harm. So you want to then quickly, after you've created that boundary and told them, given them an action, then turn around and take care of the person experiencing the harassment, check in with them, make sure they're okay. So I told you, I had to use the 5Ds and found that my superpower was direct in my, first couple of weeks at then Hollaback, now Right to Be. And so, yeah, I walked into the mailroom, was checking our mail, and there was an Asian woman there, and I heard her saying, please leave me alone, please step away. And so I remember just like this feeling of like, I need to help this person. And so I went up to her and said, hey, are you okay? Is everything okay? And as I'm saying that, she's like, no, this man is. And when she's saying this man is, he starts to like hurl insults and like racist comments and swearing at the woman or cursing at her. And so I said, I looked at him and I said, she asked you to leave her alone and you shouldn't speak to her that way. That's inappropriate. And then I turned around and I'm talking to a woman, but then this man started to yell at me. And so in that moment, I felt my blood pressure rise, actually, to be honest with you. I felt myself get like real hot, and I was getting ready to verbally spar with this man in the mailroom, forgetting, right? Like I'm at work and all this stuff. And then I look at this woman's face and she is terrified. Like, oh my God, this is gonna get worse, and now I have two escalated people on my hands. And so in that moment, I realized like, hey, this is not gonna work. My superpower is not working. I'm gonna turn and find someone else to help. And so I delegated and I found someone to go and support. And so what I like about direct is, you can speak up, but then you have to like take care of that person. In a workplace, it might look like, it might not be as confrontational, or you might say it a little more subtler, like, hey, what did you mean by that comment you made, right? Or you might say, I don't understand what's funny about that. That comment actually sounds inappropriate or sexist or homophobic. And then, wait there, right? And maybe you might not jump to use any of those yet right away. You might say, what did you mean by that? You want to say that again? Give that person an opportunity to walk back what they're saying, or really read like, what did I just say, right? And hopefully self-correct. And then in online settings, I mean, first is, because harassment can be unwieldy, I would really recommend that if you do not know the person, that you do not directly engage with them if you don't feel comfortable. Part of that is really around like, what does your digital safety look like, right? If you are deciding to say something, making sure that your digital safety is shored up and secure. And so, yeah, direct can be used, and it doesn't necessarily mean you have to like go off on a person, right? It's not about the person doing the harassing. It is about the person who's experiencing the harassment. All right. So those are our 5Ds. And so I'm kind of curious. I know you've heard all the superpower talk. I'd like to hear, based on what you've heard, If folks maybe want to chime in the chat and share, what do you feel might be your superpower? And something cool about the book is that you actually you can find out. There's a whole chapter where you can, walk through scenarios and kind of see what your comfortability level is or how you might respond, right? There's no right or wrong answer. It's really about you assessing how you might step into that situation. And then you get to find out like what are your superpowers. I think the other part of knowing what your superpower is acknowledging that like, yeah, I'm really like, maybe you feel like you can do all of them, but knowing that like there's just one of them that like is natural to me and I feel comfortable doing most of the time. But then knowing that, right, like it might not always work, like in the story I shared, right? Me using direct didn't work in that situation. And so um, then what is your backup superpower? So for folks who want to share, that'd be cool. And while y'all sharing, Emily, I think I'm gonna go ahead and just share some information on our 5Ds for Kids videos.
Yeah, please do.
Mhm. And so, so we got a question and it says, so Emma shared, what do you think is the most overlooked superpower? Huh.
I think it's
Uh,
because it's so
yeah.
obvious. People are like, duh, and they think it's so wimpy. Like, I'm the bystander intervention lady, and it's my superpower. I can't be but so wimpy. Yeah, I think it's that's my vote. What do you think, Jorge?
I do think folks overlook delay, and I think for the reason I think that specifically, I always remember the training I gave. I gave at a foundation. It was bystander intervention in public spaces, and when we got to delay and I'd finished covering it, one of the attendees um, got up and shared a story with the room, and essentially it was her recounting an experience that she had and while she was at work in Midtown Manhattan, and how it was like lunch hour in Midtown, so there was tons of people on the street, and this man verbally and physically assaulted her pretty much on the streets, and everyone watched, but kept walking, didn't do anything. She sat on the curb and she said she broke down crying and not one person walked up to her. And so knowing that like, yeah, that there is a lot of power in just acknowledging and validating someone's experience, right? Like, yes, you did just have that did happen. I saw it. And what Emily said before, it wasn't right. So
I think the other thing about delay is that if you don't do it, right? If you do it, you reduce trauma. If you don't do it, if you don't do anything, it can actually increase trauma. And a lot of times when we hear stories of people who have experienced harassment, they're almost less angry at the person that harassed them than they are at all the people who watched it and didn't do anything. But then somebody does the smallest thing, right? The "are you okay?" or the knowing glance, and it totally changes the game. So I think it's one of those like high-powered superpowers that seems really low key, but actually has a really important role to play in reducing trauma and helping people feel less alone. Another question from Kelly who asked, what would you say to a younger person who might be afraid to speak up or intervene? I think, I'm afraid to speak up. 41 strong, 41 years old. And I can get paralyzed in those moments. Like I can be drawn back into my own trauma and have kind of a freeze response. So, I mean, what I would say is like, look, that's normal. Like that's real. The idea is that you find something that you can do that feels right to you. It doesn't need to be direct. Direct is just one of 5 options. But chances are if you look at all 5 of the options, you can find one that really makes sense to you. Even when we teach direct to like little kids, we're like, hey, like, why don't you go ask them if they want to play with you, or like throw them a ball on the playground, right? And say, heads up, catch. Those types of things are things that kids are doing all the time. So to deploy them strategically isn't confrontational. It's just kind.
Mm, yeah, I agree with that. I would also say just, you know, I think first is letting them know that there is multiple ways that they can help someone, right? That it doesn't um need to just be that. And so like they don't just need to be direct. I think letting them know that, and that they're not, you know, like they also realizing like what their comfortability level might be with what's happening. And so that's also important. All right, y'all. So here we have some information on our Be a Super Ally with the 5Ds videos for kids. You can check them out here on our channels. I believe they're on our YouTube channel. And they're in partnership with our partners over at Asian Americans Advancing Justice and the Worry Show. And so please check them out, spread them far and wide. And as Emily said before, you know, keep checking us out. We already have some content for educators, but we'll have more content for children soon, near future.
Thanks, everyone. And thanks to Book Passage for having us.
Thank you, Book Passage. And thank you, Nick.
Well, already. Oh, sorry. If I can get myself back on the screen really quick. 1 second. Hello? Aha, there we are. I've returned. Thank you one last time to the both of you for coming up here and speaking today. It was it was nice to see some of the people in the audience asking some good questions and having a good time guessing about percentages and whatnot. It was very nice to see you all here today, and thank you for the very lovely lesson I guess we all learned today. It was very cool. One last time to the audience, a reminder that the book is I've Got Your Back by both of these two lovely people. If you'd like to purchase it, you can purchase it at bookpassage.com. We will send it to your house just like any other online retailer. Yes, just like that one. And we can send it to anywhere in the United States. If you have any questions about shipping outside the United States and really want to buy it from us, we do international shipping, although it's a little bit of an extra process. But nonetheless, as right here, I really appreciate you all coming out one last time. I really do hope to see you in the next one. See everybody. Bye.